Hi, my name is Ben O'Connor. I'm the production lead for Rocket League Oceania. I've been working in esports for about 6 years now, mainly working on Rocket League shows and Rocket League tournaments, but I've been working on a wide range of other different types of events and games in a wide range of different roles, such as tournament administration, broadcast production, observing, player management, you name it. Today, I'm going to walk you through part 1 on how to run a basic esports broadcast using tools such as OBS and Scoreboard Assistant. So let's get started. Today we're going to go through a few main steps. The main steps will be 1, do your research, and that's just like, doing research about a game that you want to produce. Today we'll be going through Rocket League. The second step will be making a plan, and that'll usually come in the form of a run sheet, and I'll walk you through how to do that. And then we'll also go through how to create assets. I'm not going to show you like creating assets themselves, but I'll show you what they need to look like, and how you need to integrate them. And speaking of integrating them, the next step is building the show in something like OBS, also known as Open Broadcast Software. And then after that, we'll go through how to organize your team and how to communicate with them. And then finally we'll get on to producing the show, which if you do all the steps beforehand, producing the show should be pretty easy. So let's get to the main step. Sorry, not the main step, the first step. The first step is doing research about the show you want to produce. So research can come in a few different forms, but it's mainly just watching something like watching other esports broadcast or another piece of content to see how others have worked around the game before, and also looking at things like informational pages like Wikipedia to see how a schedule of a show would play out and how much time each match or each series or each game would take up, and then seeing if there's any special things you need to account for when producing a show for a particular game. So for example, if you're looking at doing research around running a Rocket League broadcast, you'll find that there's a standard for how people schedule their games. So if we're running a best of 5 series, then usually we block out 45 minutes for that series. If we're running a best of 3, it'll be half an hour, and a best of 7 will be an hour. And then other things like, the teams will be blue and orange, and you'll need to communicate that with like an admin of some sort. You usually run with 2 commentators, and if you want to give commentary direction, then maybe look at how other commentators have commentated around that game before, so you get an idea of what the standard is for that particular game. Okay, moving on to the next step, we're going to make a plan. The run sheet is basically your plan, or also known as a script of what your show would particularly look like. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to write a example run sheet, and it's going to be a very basic show. So let's get things going. When communicating with the admins, first of all, you want to pick a first match time. Because most of the time a tournament broadcast revolves around a tournament, and the tournament starts at a particular time, right? So we speak with our admin and say, okay, the first match will start at 5, or let's go with 6 p.m. The first match will start at 6 p.m. and that'll be match 1. Now that we know where the point of match 1 is, now we need to sort of figure out what we need to do before match 1. Okay, we want to have a bit of content, we want to have a show intro before that, and then before that we might want to have a timer that says starting soon. Right, and we'll also mark that to say that that's when the show will go live. It'll be on air. That's what we should actually name it, a show on air. Now before that, we want to also do a few different things like doing a camera and mic setup, and also a crew call. And the crew call is basically when everyone is expected to arrive either at the venue for a broadcast, or in some form of communication channel like Discord or TeamSpeak or something like that. So now that we know that the match starts at 6 p.m, let's sort of space things out and sort of see where we need to be, right? So the show intro will go for 5 minutes. So if we work our way back from 6 p.m. where the first match will begin. That'll be, the show intro will start at 5:55 p.m. That's a bit late for that now, I guess. And then so we want to have like a 25-minute starting soon timer. We will set that for 5:30 p.m. Oh, that's 5:40. 5:30 p.m. Now, it's usually good practice to do a camera and mic check 15 minutes before anything goes live whatsoever, just in case there's any issues. You have a little bit of time to resolve those problems. So let's say the camera and mic check will be at 5:15 p.m. and a crew call to sort of get everyone organized and brief everyone over how the show is going to run today. That should also take it around 15 minutes just for everyone to arrive and to talk to everyone and say hi and say, okay, this is what we're doing today. We'll lock that in for 5 p.m. Alright, so now that we know what we need to do before the show, we need to sort of walk through, you know, how we're going to go after match 1. Okay, so match 1 we know is going to go for about 45 minutes. And realistically, what it actually is, it's more like 40 minutes and then it's like 5 minutes of break time. Right, so if we sort of write that in, that'll be 40 minutes of break time. Now what we need to do, after match we'll go to like a BRB or a be right back screen, and it might also have a timer as well. And then from there we'll go into match 2. And this will probably repeat itself for, let's say, for example, 4 games. Right. And the BRB will be 5 minutes, and that'll be the same for, oh, that's not how it should have worked. And that'll be the same for the other series. So, after match 4, that'll be the last match of the day. What do we need to do after that? Okay, the casters need to close out the show, so we'll have a close of show. And that's when they can say, okay, thanks for watching everyone, we'll see you guys next time, or something along those lines, right? We'll have a close the show, and then we'll have a thanks for watching screen. So close the show should be like 2 minutes, thanks for watching would be like 3 minutes, and that's basically kind of what your show intro would be, right? So we can also punch in all the times and stuff like that, and we'll do that in a second, but just to sort of reiterate, this is sort of what you want to start with when making your plan or your run sheet. Now the other things you need to think of is obviously, what's the visuals going to look like, what's the audio going to look like, what are the notes going to look like, or actually, you know, are there any notes for the scenes that you're going to be producing. So, you know, in the visual, the show intro, that's when we're going to show the casters. Match 1, we're going to show the game, and in BRB we're going to see a BRB screen. So that's, the visual is kind of self-explanatory. It's what you're showing on the screen at that point in time, right? The audio is also any kind of audio notes that you need to keep in mind. So during the show intro, we're going to have just the casters talking. In the starting screen, we're going to have music playing, and during the game, we'll have a casters plus game audio. So that's typically what we're going to be working with, right? This is the sort of run sheet that we'll be putting together. So, there's also other things around here, like you want to maybe color coordinate things. So this will be yellow, so that we know that's not live, and then we can mark this as grey, and this one too, to show that'll be the start and the end of the show. And then we can also do these ones to show, we might also mark the match as green. Alright, so if we look at this run sheet, this is a completed run sheet. Alright, it's a very basic one, keeping that in mind. But this is sort of, this will be the skeleton of the show. This is what the plan is moving forward, and there you can go with this run sheet, and we can start building the show from there. We know what we need to source for, music. We know when the casters are going to be shown, and we know what graphics and what scenes we need to build, and that's the important part for moving forward. Okay, now that we've put a plan together, the next step that we need to do is we need to start producing assets for our show so that we can sort of see what our show is going to look like and start putting things together, mainly graphic assets and then anything like animated backgrounds, scener transitions, and any sort of visual concepts that we may need. So I'll just drag this over so you guys can see. This is the package that we'll be showing you guys for an example. And these are the kind of graphics you might want to create. So here we have a game overlay. I think this is for Smash, but if we go across, this is the Rocket League game overlay, and then we go across again, some holding screens. This is what the caster scene would look like, you know, the commentary talent, and so on. And this is a single talent screen, and that's a thank you for watching. And then also if we go in here, this is, you know, these are things like starting soon. And those sort of things. So these are the kind of assets you need to be sort of thinking about, right? If you have a animated background like this pack does, you want to be creating assets that have a transparent background. So you can see here there's gray areas, that means it's transparent, at least if you're viewing it in Windows Photo mode. That's what that means. And this is all just like static imagery, sponsored text, you know, tournament name, a few cool looking things. This is the stuff that are going to go in your show, and things that you don't necessarily need to change, right? Nothing like dynamic text that are going to change, nothing like timers or anything like that. These are just flat assets that are going to go in your show, and they're going to be stuck looking the way they are and saying the things that they say, so that you can just put them in your show, fire and forget, and that's all you need to think about for these assets. So let's get into putting these assets into our show. So if we skip over to OBS here, OBS is a great tool for, you know, running small and simple broadcasts, or even, you know, you can go very deep with OBS, but it does get to a point where things, you know, start becoming a little bit over complex, and you might want to be looking for more advanced tools to produce more advanced shows. So let's get through into OBS. Here we have our first scene, and this will be our examples scene, right? So this is our blank space. This is what our program show will look like. Now, outside of the program show, we have our sources list and our scenes list, and here's a handful of example scenes that we'll go through later. But you know, this is sort of what it's going to kind of look like. We'll have our audio desk here, and we have a bunch of buttons for settings, and also to start streaming and stop streaming and stuff like that. We'll go over the settings soon. But right now, let's sort of work on setting up a scene. So we'll set up an example scene, which will be our starting soon screen. So what we want to do is we want to first of all put in our animated background that was provided. So we'll go to this plus button here down in the sources. We'll go and we'll click it, and then from here we'll go to our VLC video source. Give it a name. We don't need to really name it anything, but we might want to name it background animation. Don't have to name it, but it's just it's a nice practice so you know what you're looking at. And then here we can add our video file. So we'll add our file, and we'll go to our folder, which is here, and we're going to assets. Here is our animated background. So you can make an animated background in stuff like After Effects. You can source them online. There's a whole range of places where you can find animated backgrounds, and if you don't know how to make one, I'm sure you could find, you know, how to make an animated background, a tutorial on how to make an animated background in things like After Effects and stuff like that. So here we'll add our animated background, and now it's in our show. We can move it around, we can resize it, and we can do a handful of things. We can also pause it if we want to and have it playing. For now, we liked it where it was at the very beginning, so we'll just undo and we'll lock it there. We'll click that so that we can't click on it anymore. We can't move it because, you know, you might be playing around with some scenes later and you might accidentally move it a little bit without noticing, and you go live and you have this weird looking black space there. So it's important to lock things here in the sources list once you're happy with where they are. Okay, so the next step here is we want to add our overlay image. So our overlay image is our starting soon, for this scene anyway, and we'll just name it example. and we'll go find that overlay image. So in our broadcast pack, we'll have our scenes, and say we're in week 1, and this will be our starting soon graphic. We'll chuck that in, and there we go. Now it's over the top of the animated background. You can see the background animating if we just wait long enough. I think, is it playing? Should be playing. I'm sure it's animating back there somewhere, right? Alright, so we'll look that off too. So the last thing to add to this particular scene is we'll need a timer. So to start with a timer, we'll need a text source, and so we'll go timer, and I think we already have a timer in this scene, in this show, so we'll call it timer 2, or timer example. How's that? Even though I spelled example wrong, but let's just forget about that, hey. So we'll select our font. Doesn't really matter what font we want. I think we'll just go with Arial, and we'll go nice big 350. How's that? For now, we'll just put in some placeholder text, and then we'll put the timer where we want it. So now that the timer is where we want it, I think what we want to also do is just make sure that when it does change the time, we don't want it moving around and, you know, aligning itself a bit weirdly. So what we'll do with these text boxes that are going to be changing along a lot of the time is we'll use custom text extents to control how they sit in your frame. So custom text extents are basically defining how big the box is going to be and how big things are going to be shown and where they're going to be shown and where they're going to align, even though they'll be changing all the time. So here in our custom text extents, you can see the box is now 100 tall and 100 wide. That's measured in pixels. Let's change that from 100 tall and 100 wide to 1000 wide and 400 tall. Cool. And then the last step here we'll also align it to the right, and that should do us for there. So now we know that the text is always going to be there, and it's always going to align itself to the right, and it's not going to move around when it changes. Now the last step we need to do with with this timer is actually make it tick. So we have this cool little tool that I like to use. It's called Scoreboard Assistant. I'm sure if you could do a quick Google, you can go and find it. It's not a free software, but it's like you can pay $1 for it. It's I think they call it a non-free product, and it's a really powerful tool, at least for OBS broadcasts, where you can use this to change dynamic text sources throughout your entire broadcast. So here we have our timers tab, and to add a timer tab, you can go to this little drop down here, go to our miscellaneous tabs, and you can go clock/timers, and that's what I've done here, and that's what this is here. So the next step here is we want this part here. We want the countdown. We will ignore the stopwatch and the system time. We don't need that. Actually, at least for this show, you might want this for other shows, so just keep that in mind. But for now, we just want the countdown. So if we right click on this little ticker here, we can output this as a text file that will change, right? So if we right click this, we will go to our text config, and we'll go to our countdown. So now by default it is set to default. I'm not quite sure what default does because I haven't used default for a long time, but you want to set your countdown to a text format. So once it's set to a text format, what it will do is once you start outputting it, it'll output a text file for OBS to read, and I'll show you how we can do that now. So we'll do that, and we'll start ticking away, and we'll start the timer. So the timer is a 30-minute timer, and now what we need to do is we need to link this text source with that file that it's outputting, and I'll show you where to find that. So we'll go to read from file, and we'll go browse for that particular file. I believe it's on our C drive under Scoreboard Assistant, and this is the Scoreboard Assistant folder. You want the output. We'll go to our timer folder, and this is our countdown. Typically you want countdown A, and that should give us our countdown. It can be a bit choppy at times. I think that's just the nature of the beast. There are more efficient ways of creating timers, but Scoreboard Assistant is a powerful tool, and that's the way I like to run my timers. We can also use Scoreboard Assistant to input player names, as well as match information and match scores. So, now that we have our first scene, that is basically the starting soon screen ready to go. We have our timer in there, it's our starting soon, and this is ready to go out live. Everything that is in the scene is functional, and it's ready to broadcast. This video series is brought to you by the Australian Esports League. It's a great resource to increase your knowledge around getting into broadcast production in esports, and this also couldn't be possible with our great sponsor at Acer Australia. I'll catch you guys in part 2. See you then.